So I'll go ahead and start off with a little bit about who I am and my story and how and what are the reasons why I joined the gang. And it all comes from hopelessness and due to our circumstances, growing up. So my story began, I'm originally from El Paso, Texas. Both my parents are immigrants. I'm first generation Mexican American. My grandfather's dream was to gain a passport for all his daughters and my aunts. And when my mother, I was conceived in Juarez, Mexico. And when my mother was about to give me birth, all she had to do was cross the border to El Paso and make me a U.S. citizen, which I'm grateful for because the way things are in these days, it would have been a lot more difficult for me. But what happened was, of course, like every Mexican family, they want to go to the United States to gain the American dream. And when I was growing up, I was raised by my grandparents, both my grandparents, and that's where I found the love and the affection given to me by my grandparents, who taught me the values of a family, how to respect my elders, and introduced to the religion aspect of the Virgin Mary and Catholicism. And with that said, as a young kid, that was nourishing for me. And I was always in awe when I would be with my grandparents, although the bright idea came from my mother and father that they said, why don't we go to Los Angeles so that we can, my mother's dream was to one day own a beauty salon, and my father was to become a foreman of a construction company. Now all that sounded great, and I was 5 years old. I was born in 1975. I was 5 when we decided to move to Los Angeles, which was in 1980. And in 80, when we arrived to Los Angeles, we left this beautiful ranch in El Paso, Texas, and I think that's where the detachment took place, when I had to leave my grandparents behind, because no longer was I that innocent child. I was now sort of in fear, and I say, what can go wrong as long as you're with your parents? But we left this beautiful ranch in Texas to land in the housing projects in Boyle Heights. And in these housing projects in Boyle Heights, there were 8 local gangs that plagued that area. 7 Mexican-American gangs and 1 African-American gang. And I remember those times when my mother, we left this beautiful ranch and we lived in a studio room. And I was sleeping between my mother and father in a twin-size bed when we had an electrical stove to make our food and things in that way, in that nature. But my mother was a happy woman. I remember the first years of my life, she was a very happy young woman, smiling, always, her spirits were always high. And my father, he also too was a great man. But what happened was, being that we were immigrants, my parents were immigrants, when we came to Los Angeles, it was very difficult for them to find high-end paying jobs or what have you. And so then you can start to feel the frustrations of the mother who was no longer smiling, and the father who's now becoming frustrated because his manhood is becoming questioned, and he has to provide for this little 5-year-old baby, which is me. And I remember now, no longer were they smiling, and now I can hear the fighting and the domestic disputes that were starting to take place. And I remember also a lot of things that would happen. My father could not gain employment, so his best thinking led him to drug dealing. And I remember I was 5 and 6 years old when my father now started to get into lifestyle. He would transport drugs from Juarez, Mexico into El Paso, into Los Angeles. My father's quality time with me was no longer about going to the park and playing baseball and having a good time with my dad. It was about possessing his heroin, introducing me to what is sticky heroin, powder heroin. And I remember me just wanting to be loved and embraced by my father, and if it meant that I listened to what he's educating me on, which is drugs, then so be it. I just wanted my father's love and attention. And I remember there were times when he would take me to the park. My mother had to work 2 jobs because my father was now becoming irresponsible. My mom worked in a nearby factory stitching up toy dolls. And I remember she would bring me these toy dolls every week, whether it's Woody Woodpecker, whether it was Mickey Mouse, and that would kind of move me. But the fact was that it would hurt me to see my mom in frustration and despair. And I could not do anything. I was only 5 and 6 years old. There was times when my father would take me to the park and he would tell me, Mimo, put this in your pocket. And I would hold his drugs and he would tell me the red, the green, the yellow, and the blue, the different types of heroin. And he would say, Mimo, come, and when I call you, you give me the drug, the yellow one, the green one, and I will give it to him as if it were candy. Then he'll tell me, go back and play basketball. When the police will come and have my father and his friends against the wall, and they had the slight idea that the little boy playing basketball there was possessing the heroin. And now being introduced to the street life in a sense. And now becoming a habitual liar. And now they're introducing me to the LAPD being the enemy. Because my dad told me, if you see them, you stay away from them. If you see them, don't come near me. And also, when we get home, you tell your mom we were at McDonald's and we're having a good time at the park, but you don't tell her what we were actually doing. So he would have me in shooting galleries at the age of 6 and 7. I remember he would sit me in the couch and he would tell me, don't look over your shoulder. But being a little kid and a curious kid, I would look over my shoulder where I see him and his friends are packing the heroin and things of that nature. So to me, it was very traumatic. At times, what happened when my mom started to recognize that my father was not losing control of this drug dealing, he was not becoming a drug addict, I can sense the fact that my mom was now losing hope, and my mom was standing up to my father telling him, you must stop what you're doing, this is not what we came to LA for, and my dad then said, why don't you shut the F up and leave me the hell alone? Confusion of a child, watching the father he loves, watching the mother he loves, watching father put hands on the mother he loves, but if that's my dad, why does it hit my mom? And mom, why are you taking this from him? So what does that do to a child? He detaches, he isolates and steps back and he starts to blame himself. Because if I would have been born, maybe their life would have been a lot greater without me in it. And I start to point fingers at me. At that time, you're 6 and 7, there's not much coping skills that you can take place, or who you can, my grandparents were too far for me to run to. And so then for me, luckily, when my father would beat my mother, there was one night when my dad would beat my mom and I could hear her scream, "Déjame, Shorty, no me golpees, Shorty." And I used to run down the hallway and jump in between my mother and father. And my dad grabbed me by the shirt and he threw me off her at the rag doll. And I realized that I was helpless there and I couldn't help my mom. So what happened for me was that I wanted to go and hide under a coffee table. And under that coffee table, I would bring my notebook and my pencil. And I started to sketch my own worlds to escape my reality. When I discovered art to be a gift, and it gave me meaning, it gave me hope, it gave me definition. Well, that gift I would bring with me to school. And at the same time, in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, 6th grade, I would find myself doing my schoolwork. 2 plus 2 equals 4, 4 plus 4 equals a drawing. Now get your ass up and go to the principal's office because you're not supposed to be drawing in class. So now I'm sitting in front of Sister Yvonne constantly. I remember her very well. She cut my ducktail. And Sister Yvonne was a great woman. She's a great sister. But she had me right in front of her where I had to do my schoolwork. And again, I will bring that gift of art to me. But the teachers never took the time to ask me, what is it? Why is it that you draw so much? Why is it that you love to draw? They were quick to punish and penalize me for something that I love to do, instead of getting to understand why is it that I love to draw. What is it that you're carrying? Why is it that you draw? What's happening in your household? They never took the time to ask me that, but quick to punish and penalize me and send me to the principal's office. Fast forward to 8th grade. My mother had a dream, right? She said, my son's going to graduate Catholic school, he's going to go to Salesian, and hopefully end up at Bosco Tech someday. That was the ideal dream. Why in 8th grade, that dream was shattered by a teacher, because I was just to give my mom a glimpse of that dream. I was in 8th grade when I was drawing in class. And I remember before that happened, in 6th grade, and I had to tell this piece so you can understand how this happened. In 6th grade, we used to go to the public park. My father was a drug dealer, and every time we go to the public park, which was our schoolyard, my father would be selling drugs there, so I always see him. And one of these events, I was with my little colleagues, and in Catholic school, you travel with your colleagues in 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade, consistently every year. So it's the same, we build a family, and these are my little colleagues. And I say, hey man, I feel like urinating, let's go to the restroom. And he's like, all right, come on. So we walk into the restroom in the public park. And right when I walked in, I remember this image very vividly. I walked in, and I caught my father with his left leg on the toilet, pushing a syringe in his arm, into his arm with his right arm. He looks at me, I look at him, and everything became silent around me. And we made eye contact. And instead of my father embracing me or calling me towards him to explain to me what I just saw, he disrespected me and demoralized me in front of my colleagues and told me to get the hell out of the restroom. And those beautiful words in Spanish. And to me, it was like the most embarrassing moment, as if he took my soul and just ripped it off because of that action. And that day, I remember that I was very angry and upset with my father as well as my mother, because all this time she could not protect me or prevent me or keeping alive from me of what's happening and reasons why now my house was broken. Well, that's that incident in 8th grade. The teacher, I'm drawing in class. He comes around, Fabian, you need to stop drawing in class. Why are you making a big deal out of this, Mr. Vargas? We're going to graduate in 2 weeks. I said, you need to stop drawing in class. All right, whatever, dude. Kept drawing. Sure enough, 2 weeks into graduation, Mr. Vargas comes back and he grabs my artwork and he puts it in front of me as if he's challenging. And he said, what did I say? I said, Mr. Vargas, why are you going to do this, man? I know it's 2 weeks into graduation. I said, you must stop drawing in class. Embarrassed me, demoralized me, made me feel small like my dad did the moment I caught him shooting heroin in his arm in front of my colleagues. And now my colleagues are challenging me. Ooh, what are you going to do now? And then this teacher used to have high blood pressure, so he used to use lifesavers to control sugar levels. So I said, this man reminds me of my dad, same thing, but he's not my father. So I get up, I grab the desk, and I throw it at him. Boom. And now the teacher gets so angry, and his high blood pressure arose, I guess. And he's like, Fabian! Boom. Looked like a fish out of water going through convulsion, foam coming out of his mouth. And now my colleagues are like, ooh, what are you going to do now? Pumping me up. And I said, why don't you eat your lifesavers now, punk? That might save your life, being the smartest that I become. And sure enough, the principal comes, grabs me by the shirt, takes me to the principal's office, and Fabian again has done it. Fabian is the messenger who has to go tell his mom that he's no longer graduating Catholic school in 2 weeks. Fabian's getting expelled and he's going to the Lion's Den. And the Lion's Den I call public school because that's where everybody in Boyle Heights goes to. All the gangs, all the taggers, every single body from Boyle Heights goes to Homeboy Industries, where I was being sent to. But before they sent me to go tell my mother this, which was heartbreaking for me, and I already see my mother going through it, they sent their troubles to who? Father Greg Boyle, the founder of Homeboy Industries. And Father Greg, he used to be the priest at the time at the Lord's Mission, the parish. And I remember walking into his office, and he said, what happened, son? I said, well, gee, these dudes ripped my artwork, man, and I ain't gonna let that happen. No one can take that from me but me. He goes, yeah, son, but you threw a desk at him. I said, he ripped my artwork. And then he goes, well, I'm not gonna be able to save you. You're gonna have to, you're gonna get expelled, and you're gonna go to public school. But before you leave, son, I want you to do something for me. And I said, what's that, G? He said, I want you to go home and draw me something. What? For the very first time, I'm not being punished or penalized for something that I love to do. He is now recognizing my gift and building a relationship. So Father Greg becomes my father figure. My father was in and out of all the prisons when I was 6, 7, 8, and 9 years old. My weekends did not consist of playing baseball and basketball. My weekends consist of waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning and jumping on that car with my mother going to Wasco, Delano, Tehachapi, Ironwood, Corcoran, all the state penitentiaries throughout the state of California to visit my father. Very resentful because my innocence and my childhood was not being robbed because of his actions. Moments when we get to prison, they will take me and my mother to a separate room, and they will put their hands on my mother's private areas as if she's transporting drugs into the system, which my mother shouldn't be going through those experiences because of my father's actions. So more anger and resentment towards police, towards my father, and I'm sad for my mother that she has to experience this type of violation because of my father. I went to public school. Father Greg was there. He stepped up to the plate. Now he became my father figure and friend. But Father Greg could not walk with me every day through my journey. He had the whole housing projects to worry about, which was 8 gangs at the time. So here I am off to Hollenbeck Junior High. Went to Hollenbeck. I was lost of interest in the school. There was no such thing as academics for my book anymore. And so the first thing I did, because there was 8 local gangs in the housing projects, all I wanted to do was hip hop. I was a break dancer, graffiti artist, because that's what was taking place in the 80s. And it was the only form of escape at the time, because in my era, there was no resources for me. YMCA, Salesian Boys and Girls Club, but Fagan's not into sports, so that doesn't really fit my criteria. There's no art schools in Boyle Heights, so mom can't put me in art school, so maybe I should just hang out on the Alley River and create mom's studio space there. And that's where I started to perfect my skills in the form of graffiti art. So eventually when I went to Hollenbeck Junior High, I was not interested in school. I got expelled from Hollenbeck, and reason being that I was vandalizing the school as if I cried for help. No one could step up and save me. Went to Belvedere Junior High, and this was located in a different neighborhood, so I possessed the .25 concealed weapon, and I had it in my PE locker. And someone told on me, and they found the gun in the locker and sent me off to juvenile hall. At the age of 10 and 12, I was already visiting the juvenile hall system. Got out of that, went to Griffith Junior High, rode on a police car, kicked me out of Griffith, and I went to Stevenson, got into a fight, and there I am, getting kicked out of every school throughout the Los Angeles Unified School District. Ask me how I got to high school, I don't know, maybe I was getting older, maybe I was getting taller, because I didn't do no schoolwork to even get to high school, but I got there. Went to Roosevelt Junior High, same thing, vandalized the school, got kicked out. So once that all started happening, I started to recognize that my father was no longer in the picture to protect me or to guide me. I had lost hope on that end. My mom tried to make ends meet as a single mother because of my father, and I asked her, can we move out of the projects? And my mom says, you put me in a hard spot. I'm a single mom, can't make ends meet, and you're asking me to move out of the projects. Very difficult to do. One night my mother tells me, Fabian, I don't want you to leave the house. It was 10 o'clock at night, almost midnight, heading to 11. As if she knew something was going to happen that night. And I said, all right, Mom, I got you. But I used to jump out the second floor window to go to the Alley River and to perfect my skills in graffiti art form. And this night she told me, you must not leave the house. I'm getting tired of you jumping out the window. You're going to end up falling and killing yourself, because it was a pretty high apartment complex. This night, I did the same thing. I jumped out the window, my bag full of spray cans, and I made way to the Alley River. Now, most of the time when I would come from school or walk around the projects, I used to be punked, bullied. They'd take my chains, they'd take my bikes, and I was a little small kid trying to survive in the housing projects, getting bullied by the gangs that played that area. And I was starting to get mad, and I was starting to get frustrated that I could not be at ease in my own neighborhood. So one night I'm coming back from the Alley River, and I'm walking with my bag full of spray cans, finished my art project in the Alley River, and I'm walking back, and then I see these gang members that usually jump me every other week. And I saw them, they were right behind the Lord's Mission Catholic Church, where Father Gray did his missionary work. And I saw them and I said, man, oh man, they're right there. And then in this moment I said, you know what, that's it, man. I'm tired of running, I'm not gonna go around. I used to go around the blocks just to avoid them. And this time I said, you know what, this is it. I don't care, whatever happens, I don't care anymore. I'm sick and tired of having to run from these guys. So I make my way through them. Sure enough, they come around me and they stop me and they say, what's up, fool? Where you from? I'm like, oh man, here we go, man. I don't bang, man. I'm just a tagger, dude. I'm just trying to do my artwork. I said, where you from, fool? Like, damn, I don't bang, all right? I'm just a tagger. And right away, boom, they hit me in the face. It was midnight. I mean, it was like 2 o'clock in the morning. I can hear my mom say, Fabian, don't leave the house, every time they were beating me up. And at the same time they're beating me up, now I'm bleeding. They opened up my bag full of spray cans, grabbed a spray can and cracked my head open with my own spray cans. And now I'm unconscious on the floor. I can feel that I'm leaving this earth. Like if I was about to die, they were beating me up so bad. Same punches awoke me, and they grabbed me and put me against the fence, and they said, where you from, fool? As if they're waiting for me to claim their neighborhood. And I said, I don't bang. Still said I didn't bang, because that was not my career of choice. I never wanted to be a gang member. And that night they said, all right, punk, and they let me go, but I told them, I'll be back. And they're like, ah, get out of here, fool, you ain't gonna do nothing, you little punk, and then, so I'll be back. Now that night I felt broken, I felt hopeless, I felt helpless. I couldn't run to my dad because he was in prison. I could not go home and show my mom how bad I'm beat. So I go look for my older cousin, who was already involved in gangs. When I walked across the street to the other side of the project, sure enough, my cousin was there. And he saw me and he goes, what happened, Fabi? I go, these dudes keep jumping me, primo, I'm getting tired of it, man, because and I'm crying like a little baby, missing his mother, missing his father, missing his baby ball. Just in such pain, and I'm getting tired. And my cousin said, well, what happened? There's a guy across the street. You know what's the only way? And I said, well, then I'm in. And that night, I joined the gang. And that night, I felt the love. I felt the acknowledgement. I felt being part of it, because my cousin embraced me. He accepted me. He acknowledged me. And when he whistled, all the homeboys came. And they're like, look, this is my little cousin, man. These vatos over here jumped him. Boom. And they're all like, so they're home. Now I'm part of something. Now this is my family. This is what I think I need now. And sure enough, in that moment, they all came in, jumped in the car. We went to the other side of the housing projects where those guys had beat me up. As I told them I'll be back, my cousin gives me a 38 special at the time. put this in your pocket, I put it in my pocket, now I'm in the business. Now I'm not knowing what, the gangs don't give you a manual with rules and say, go over this and come back and do this if you're ready. You're just in it. And when they gave me the gun, I was a little afraid. I was like, oh man, this is business. This is serious. This is not what I'm used to. Sure enough, we go to the other side, and my cousin tells me, get off the car. And all the homeboys get off the car. He goes, now go tell them where you're from. The power. I go over, and I say, what's up now? This is where I'm from. And they're like, oh, homie, I didn't know that was your cousin, Holmes. Hey, these pants are dog. And now everybody's bowing down because of my cousin and all this stuff. And I was like, that's bullshit. I went to school with you. And you know where I live, all of a sudden now you didn't know, so I'm sorry, right, whatever. Now I'm in the nightmare. Now I'm involved in gangs, now I'm contributing to the violence and everything that takes place within gang culture. It is anger, it is pain and misery being transmitted. That's what gangs do. It's just me hurting another to uplift my esteem. That's what gangs do. And so for me, when I joined that gang, I realized that now I belong to a bigger structure. That is not just about this gang, it's about something bigger. And now it's very difficult to turn away, so I become loyal to them. And I'm hurting others. Now my mother's not only suffering, but a heroin addict for 25 years, my father, but now she has a gang member son in violence, which is myself. Being that I was involved in gangs and everything was taking place, it was in 1994 when I decided to have my first child. His name was Fabian Jr. And I thought that by having a family, my life would change. But the trauma was in here. It was not about having a child, so my life would change. So then I had my first woman, that's Graciela, and I had Fabian Jr. And the trauma was so deep embedded in me that me and his mother were smoking crack. And I had my son Fabian Jr. who will cry in the other room for his meal. And I used to tell his mom, why don't you go shut him the F up? He's messing up my eye. And this is my biological blood son, Fabian Jr. There was times that I would leave him behind just to go get more crack. There was times when I had $40 in my pocket and they need diapers. I said, here's $5, go to the 99-cent store, so I gotta go get my fix. Ugly, scandalous, evil, And so I lost that relationship with Graciela. She took my son in 6 months. Again, I felt abandoned, neglected, rejected, the way my dad made me feel. The minute it took Fabian, I put myself in that situation. When I left the gang again, I felt abandoned, neglected, rejected. So I kept putting myself in these situations of abandonment, neglect, and rejection. And then I bumped into Elizabeth, the woman that I'm with today. And she was 15, I was 25 years old. Not a good picture, right? Not acceptable. But at the time, I remember the time Elizabeth would walk by my house, and I was an alcoholic. And this Elizabeth, I would call her a square, that I turned into a rectangle, in a sense, because I put her through so much. And Elizabeth was traditional Mexican-American woman who went to school and did everything but book. And for me, I was blessed, and I don't know what she saw in me. She's still trying to figure it out to this day. But I remember seeing her walk by. And then one day I had the courage. I said, you know what, I'm going to go hit her up. So I run up there, Elizabeth, I go, hey, what's up, girl, what's your name? And she goes, Elizabeth. And I go, all right, where do you live, folks? How old are you? 15. Dang, okay. I got so I'm walking away from Elizabeth, and then she goes, I go, that's too young, I might get in trouble. I don't want to go to jail behind this. And then she goes, and, okay, you opened up the door now. So I went back to Elizabeth, and I got with Elizabeth. For a minute, we were hiding in under the table because they were mom and dad. They're very traditional, straight from the ranch, the type that will marry you if they find out you're with them or get pregnant. Very old school. So eventually, I had a kid with Elizabeth named Damien. And I did change for a minute. I did get into a construction job, and I did do construction. Father Greg hooked me up. Now, Father Greg was part of my life throughout my journey. He would never hire me because of my addiction, but he will always keep in touch with me and give me a little bone here and there, a little bone here and there. So he hooked me up with a construction company, which I worked for 2 years as a drywaller carpenter, went to school, got my certification and everything. And then I took advantage of Elizabeth. I recognized that she didn't understand the lifestyle. I then started to tamper with methamphetamine, drugs, and now I'm putting Elizabeth through what I put Graciela through. Elizabeth didn't understand it, and she was so young that she wouldn't leave. And she left me twice, and I went once to kick her door down. And I took Elizabeth and my child Damien back to the house, and I threatened the father and mother. I said, you guys take my son. I'll start with your father, and then I'll take care of your mother later. And then Elizabeth's not living in fear. I was becoming violent behind methamphetamine, all the hurt and the pain that was happening within me. So eventually I had Damien, my life didn't change. Then I said, well, maybe I should have another child. My life will change. Andrew came on board, still in the lifestyle. I think I need a girl. The girl would help me change. Then I brought honesty into the world, and I was still continuously getting high. And so then eventually one day my mom, I would have her living with me in my mother's house, and we would sleep on a wooden floor like this in the living room. And my mom was very frustrated and agitated with me. She couldn't deal with me anymore. And one day I tell my mom, Mom, you're the grandmother. Why do you have my kids sleeping on the floor? And my mom said, you got it all wrong. You're the father. The reason why they're sleeping on the floor is because you're on drugs. And I'll be a fool if I let you sleep in a room if you don't pay rent. So you figure it out. Oh, really, Mom? You want to get crazy with me? So F you and this and this and this and this and that. Now I'm becoming violent towards my mother like my father would do. Great teacher. My mom one day offered me food. Fabian, you're getting skinny. You're going to die. You got to eat. Methamphetamine sucks the life out of you. You got to eat. You're going to die. Oh, you're laughing at me, Mom? No, mijo, you have to eat. If you don't eat, you're going to die. Oh, you're laughing at me, aren't you? I got a cup of water and I threw it in my mother's face. And my mom barely dodged it, smashed the glass through the kitchen wall, and she fell on her knees begging, like as if she's seen the devil. Mijo, please stop, don't do this, and begging for mercy. And Elizabeth sitting there, quiet, you don't say anything. You're next. So I have my own family entrapped in their own home because of meth. And the struggle between a mother trying to keep the son out of jail, but at the same time not putting him out, but yeah, I love him, he's my son, but he is acting crazy. So that's a tricky thing for my mother. So one day she tells me, Fabian, if I come home and you're smoking drugs in my house, I'm going to call the police. My mom put me in jail like 3 times or so. And one of these nights, she knew exactly when to do it, because at night you don't sleep, you're on meds, so you're paranoid. And eventually one day I was in the shower, I walked out and the police was right outside the restroom door, like, ready? Let's go to jail, man. So she put me in jail many times. And this time she goes, if I come home and you're doing drugs in my house, I'm going to call the police. So, okay, Mom, whatever. I didn't have respect for her. And one of these events I remember, and I have to tell this one, and I'm getting to the redemption part. But at this time, my mother had kicked me out of the house, but she kicked me out to the garage. She wouldn't kick me out to the streets, she still wants to keep an eye on her son. So I go to the garage, and I'm in the garage, and I still have all these little peepholes in the garage because of the police, making sure no one's coming up the driveway, the parent. And at this night, I had all my drugs in the garage. And I remember sitting there smoking methamphetamine. And I could hear my kids playing outside. And I hear them laughing, and they're throwing the ball. And I'm now listening to my childhood. I'm listening to my innocence, something that was missing in my life. So I go look out the people, and I'm staring at my children playing innocently. And I wanted to go out there and play with my children, but the drugs and the insanity of the drugs were not letting me. And in this moment, as I'm looking through the people, an attractive voice came. Kill yourself. Kill yourself. Kill yourself, you worthless piece of shit. Kill yourself. And it sounds attractive at first. Then it starts to become demonic. And in this moment, I'm feeling guilty and shameful that I can't go out there and play with my children. I'm listening to my childhood, and now I'm crying and I'm feeling broken. The first thing I did was reach for a blade, and I slit my wrist. Now I'm full of blood, awakened from that voice that was coming to haunt me. I kicked the garage door open, and I run out, and my children stop to play. They see their father full of blood running across the backyard. My mother receives me. She drops what she's doing, and she says, what the hell is wrong with you? You're killing yourself. Look at you. Get me to the hospital now. Mother takes me to the hospital. I survived that night. Suicide attempt number 1. Survived that night. Did I stop using drugs? No. I couldn't wait to get back to the garage knowing there was drugs in there. I continue to get high. Now my mom tells me if I come home and you're doing drugs in my house, I'm going to call the police. And this time Elizabeth's still sticking it out. Elizabeth's still there. And I remember one more story about Elizabeth was when I used to think Elizabeth was with everyone in the block because of the paranoia of methamphetamine. One day she's watching TV and is facing towards the street. My neighbor's washing his car, and I used to blame her for being with him, which is all in the head because Elizabeth's nothing like that. And so I said, you're looking at the neighbor, aren't you? I'm watching TV, Fabian. I go, if I see you looking at that neighbor, you know what I'm going to do to you, Elizabeth? you're sick, you're evil, you're nah. And at this time, my mom's hanging frames, and she had a box of nails. And my mom's hanging frames. And then Elizabeth, in my head, I think she's looking at the neighbor. So I grabbed the nail, and I said, what did I tell you? I grabbed the nail, and I threw it at Elizabeth. And it landed right in between her eye and her eye socket. Now she's bleeding like that. And she just breaks down, and my mom slaps the shit out of me. Boom! And calls the police, and I run. Now my mom tells me, if I come home and you're doing drugs, I'm gonna call the police. Under threat, paranoid, all that. I knew my mom was coming that room. I asked Elizabeth to help me get in the attic. So I go up in the attic. I have my methamphetamine, my pipes, lighters. I was about to stay up there for about a week. I was ready set to get high and stay up there. Elizabeth helps me get up into the attic. Now I'm up there, and then my mom walks into the room. Boom! You hear the door. Where's Fabian? And Elizabeth's in the living room. I'm watching them through the attic, through the vents, and I can see Elizabeth with the kids in the living room, and my mom walks down the hallway. Fabian, looking for me in every room, and now my heart's going. My mom's here, and if I stay up here, she's gonna call the police. I'm gonna go to jail. If I go to jail, I'm gonna do 6 years. And the methamphetamine, it's not starting to kick in. And then my mom, just to my luck, she comes and sits right underneath of where I'm at to watch the soap operas. Now I got my mother right underneath me. I'm like, oh man, I gotta get out of here. If I don't get out of here, I'm gonna die. If I die, I'm gonna go to prison. If I go to 6 years, I'm gonna go to prison. Methamphetamine. So eventually I get up quietly. I say, I gotta go back in the attic. Now all this is happening in the attic, and they don't even know. Elizabeth knows I'm up there. My mom doesn't have a clue. So I get up quietly, and there's beans up there, and I step on it. Gonna hear me, she's gonna catch me, methamphetamine. So I stay stuck for a minute. I gotta get out of here. So I step again. The beans squeaking. I'm like, man. And now I'm stuck. And I'm there for about 30 minutes. Can't move. Holding the pipe so hard. Lighter in one hand. And I'm starting to sweat because the sun's hitting the attic. And now, as fiberglass, air conditioners, heart's beating, and I gotta get out of here because if my mom catches me, I'm going to prison, I'm not going to prison, and now I'm getting stuck. Now I'm experiencing an overdose. And I gotta get out. And I can't breathe. And I'm not going to die up here. So I bust the hole through a drive out, and I land right in front of my mother. Boom, ta-da! And my mom said, Hijo de tu, all these beautiful names in Spanish. And she went straight for the phone and called the police. And I looked at my mother for the very last time. Because I had told my mother that I would never go to prison. I'd rather be dead if I go to prison. Because that's not the chapter that I want in my life. And I told her this many times before because she had put me in jail many times and I'm not going to prison. So I looked at my mother and I looked at my wife Elizabeth and I looked at my children because I'm dismissing myself from this earth because here's the second suicide attempt. And this time I must not fail. So I walked there, I looked, I stared, and I just ran out of the house. Boom! And I just went down 6th Street through Hollaback and Roosevelt, made my way to Hollaback Park. There's a pond, and I'm running from the police. I can hear the helicopters. I can hear the sirens, whether they were there or not. I didn't care. I just kept running. And at this point, there's a bridge in Hollaback Park that has gates because a lot of heroin addicts, gang members congregate there, so they put gates on it. I couldn't cross the bridge, so I jumped into the pond. Now I got water up to my chest. I jumped back onto the bridge, back into the pond, and I made my way towards the freeway. And as I'm running towards the freeway, best believe me, no one in society took the time to say, hey, are you okay? You thirsty? Everything okay over there? I was on my own tip. Made way to the freeway. Now I'm walking on the freeway wall on the edge, and that's not leading me anywhere. And the freeway walls are about 15 to 20 feet high, so now I'm not hanging by the freeway wall. I let go, I land, my knees sit under my jaw. Boom, bite my tongue ripped open. Smoked out, weighed about 105 pounds. All full of seaweed and water from the pond. Now my mouth is bleeding because my tongue is ripped open. And I'm walking on the side of the freeway and I'm feeling broken and I'm crying internally. And I knew I was going to hurt myself. And as I'm walking on the side of the freeway, the attractive voice comes back. Kill yourself. Kill yourself, you worthless piece of shit. Kill yourself, you worthless piece of shit. And it's inside me. It's pushing me towards the road, and it's so demonic that it scares me. And I was like, man, I didn't want to hear the voice, so I grabbed my ears and I said, ah! Disrespectfully, I screamed towards the sky, F! And I ran towards the freeway. Boom. First lane, second lane, third lane, can't turn back. Cars are coming full speed. Now my mission is to get to the center divider. Now I'm in competition with a turquoise Suburban truck that I remember well. And as I'm running full speed, full of water, full of blood, smoked out and hearing voices, a spiritual warfare starts to take place. As I hear the demonic voice pushing me towards the road and I'm seeing the truck coming at its distance, I hear a woman's soft voice that said, "No, mijo, think beautiful thoughts." I said, it was a voice of a grandmother or the prayers of my mother, but it was a spiritual warfare taking place. I see the truck coming. I realize I'm not going to make it. And the truck is getting closer. Driver's not watching, not looking, not stopping. And I see it coming. I remember closing my eyes, clenching my fist, twisting my body as I'm waiting for the impact of the truck. And in this moment, I said, "My kids!" And right there and then, it was as if a gust of wind came. And I felt the impact. Boom. And I thought it was the impact of the truck. But then I heard my chest in the center divider. Bam. And I'm touching my flesh and the truck just goes. Now I'm in the out-of-body experience or something. I get onto the center divider. I look towards the sky and I see the sun rays dancing beautifully. As if the truck had took the old and allowed me to live. When I looked towards the sky, I felt the feelings of peace, joy, happiness, serenity. The feelings that can only come from one God, my higher power. Those feelings of the grandmother that used to take care of me when I was a kid. The voice that could have guided me to get to the center divide. Maybe my grandmother fought the demon, whatever it may be. But that point on, the highway patrol comes and stops the freeway. And they call me towards them as to arrest me. I flip them off and I run. And I go, and guess who I call? My mother. ¿Dónde andas, hijo de tu pinga? All this beautiful Spanish. It had just happened in 45 minutes. I said, "Mom, I almost got killed today." And the tone changed. ¿Dónde estás, mijo? I'm in the projects. Don't move. I'm on my way. No matter what I put my mother through, or what I did to her, or what I said to her, she still came to come get me. And it's the image of the Virgin Mary when she comes for her son from the cross. Because when I was standing by the payphone, I looked half dead as a zombie. But what my mom could not see was the flame that I discovered in the freeway incident, the touch of God. She tells me to get in the car, and she starts to cry. "I don't know what's going to be of you, son. Either you're going to kill me or you're going to kill yourself." And I said, "I know, Mom. But guess what?" She said, "What?" "I think I have a drug problem." And she said, "You don't. I've been trying to tell you for the past 15 years. Now you're telling me you have a drug problem." And I said to my mom, first thing that came out of my mouth after that, I said, "Where's Elizabeth and my children?" I also believe that every son must return to his father. And the fact that I said my children, God, you and them, that I had compassion. And he wanted me to see that that's my purpose in life. Because from that moment, he rescued me. And from that moment, I went back home. Thank God, Elizabeth was still sitting there with my little children. And I told her, "I want to go to rehab." And Mom said, "Well, you got 3 days to go to rehab." 3 days came, knocked on the door. "Fabian, it's time to go to rehab." I get up and I said, "F rehab." I walked away. It didn't sound like me. It didn't make sense. I sounded ignorant. And I turned around and said, "Mom, I'm going to rehab." Right? All right, got it. All right. So I went to rehab, went to Salvation Army, did 6 months there. And I started to learn that a lot of my hurt came from my father, abandonment, abuse, neglect, demoralization, low self-esteem. All that I discovered in recovery. Once I got to recovery and I was able to graduate, I sat before 110 men, my mother, my brother, my sister, and her boyfriend, and Elizabeth and my children. 110 men there, I had to make amends, and I made amends to my sister and said, "I'm sorry for beating up your boyfriend. Hey, Holmes, I'm sorry for putting my hands on you. Brother, I'm sorry for stealing all your music equipment. I promise I get that back to you as soon as I get my life back on track." And I said, "Mom, there's nothing I can say to you. You won't believe me. Let me actually speak." Elizabeth, same thing. "I don't know what to say to you. You've been there, whatever." And the voice of Father Greg comes back. Everything he told me when I was 10 years old starts to flourish. You are exactly what God had in mind when he created you. You could be the next Picasso. You're so potentially talented, son, and all that. So I knew exactly where to go to when I got out of rehab. Homeboy Industries. Look for Father Greg. Father Greg would never hire me. I walk by the office, and he sees me. He runs out the office. Where you going, son? I'm here to see you, G. Wow, man, you never did that before. And now he's all over me, chasing me. I kind of come out and to grab me. And I said, I'm here to see you, G. Sit here. You always walk by my office, and you never stop. I go, but now I'm here to see you, G. Sit here and don't move. Now I'm all fidgety in the chair waiting because I'm all excited about seeing Father Ryken and like the prodigal son, right? He must return. So now he calls me in. Ryken, come on in. Now I sit there and Father Ryken leans over his desk and he starts to cry. And he says, where you been, son? I said, well, G, I finally did what you asked me to do, G. What was that? You said if I were to go to rehab, you will give me an opportunity to be part of Homeboy. He looks at his watch, he sits back and he goes, damn, son, that took you some time. That took me 5 years prior. And I said, I know, G, but I didn't. And he said, I keep my promise. You start Monday. Now that weekend I couldn't sleep, and it wasn't because of methamphetamine. It was because I was so excited to be given my opportunity at Homeboy Industries. The same feelings that came about in the freeway incidents was the same feelings I received when Father Gray gave me my job for the very first time. And I knew exactly where it was coming from. Now I get a sense of where my blessings are coming from. Called my mother, said, Mom, I got the job, you better take care of it, all that good stuff. And I came in Monday, started answering phones. Homeboy Industry, how can I help you? Homeboy Industry, how can I help you? This is boring. Homeboy Industry, how can I? Father Gray, what's up, son? I said, look, G, I got a proposition. What's that, son? You're getting ahead of yourself. I go, look, G, I got 15 years of drug experience. All the years of drugs I was using. I said, why don't you let me use your license, G? And he said, look, you can start at AA meeting, but you got to work your way up. Sure enough, slowly he said, go talk to Fabian. Pedro would talk to Fabian. Now he's making me a drug counselor. And I'm just there receiving the people, doing what I do best. And I decided to go back to school. And now I'm a state certified drug counselor by the state of California, the board of California. And now I've become the assistant director to the substance abuse component at Homeboy Industries. Not only that, but I also became part of the leadership team, part of the council, which feels the pulse of Homeboy Industry, run the place when Father Greg's not around. Also, another thing is that I returned 15 years of my mother's life back to her. She no longer has to worry about me at night. She told me specifically, I said, Mom, I'm sorry. She said, don't worry, son. You gave me 15 years of my life back. Now there's no drugs and violence in my household. And the best gift that a father can give their children is to love the mother. That's what I've learned. And because of my gift of art, I picked it back up in 2008. And luckily for my gift of art, I've traveled the States and also the world. I've been painting. I have my own studio in downtown LA. I've constructed an art academy to meet the needs of the youth who are once like me vandalizing the streets, to give them an arena so they too can nurture that gift of art, and with the hopes they expand their horizons into a career of art into colleges throughout Los Angeles. Not only that, but not only am I have my studio, but today I'm very attentive to the children's needs. For example, my little daughter Maya, who came after all the others, I have a little girl named Maya, and she draws things for me. Look, Dad. And I go, oh my God, Maya. And then she gives me the drawing, and then I say, you're a great artist, Maya. You know Frida Kahlo? And she's like, no, who's Frida? Frida Kahlo is a great Mexican artist, but I think you're better than her. And I think this will be the Smithsonian someday. Watch. And I'm going to put it on the wall, okay? Thank you, Daddy. Motivation, attentive acknowledgement, and giving them value. So that's how I learned to become a father. But other than that, you know, I mean, everything's been good. Now we're going to leave with his story, and we'll go from there, okay? Thank you for letting me share.
It's a little hard to follow. So I'm going to tell you guys a story about a young boy. This young boy's name was born biologically by the name of Wilfredo Lopez. I tend to say this boy was born to a normal, very dysfunctional family. A single mother immigrated from a third world country by the name of El Salvador when she was 15 years old with a 9-month-old baby at arms. This was his older sister. And when she got to the United States, she came like most immigrants come from the southern part of the United States, of the continent, was to work, wanted a better life. But she wanted to get away from a country that was at a war, a civil war just like the one we had here, kind of on this side of the country. But in that country, her sisters and her family witnessed and experienced some things that no human should experience. And this little boy never understood that of his mother until he got to the age of maybe 29 or 28. So Wilfredo was born 2 years later. He was abandoned by his father before he was even born. So he was named by his aunts and uncles because his mom could care less what his name would be, because that's how much it mattered to her. Wilfredo came along in 1985, July 3rd to be exact. And when Wilfredo came to this world, his aunts and uncles embraced him and said, "Wow, he's our nephew, he's your son." And his mother, it really didn't matter. Wilfredo grew up inspired to wanting to be a soccer player. He grew up in front of a park where he spent most of his time. And when Wilfredo was in the 3rd grade, and I refer to schools because we're actually in an auditorium, Wilfredo had a teacher by the name of Miss Cross, and he could remember her name. And at those times, I don't know if they do it now, I know this is a private school, but this was a public school, they do testing every year where they fill in the bubbles, right? And Wilfredo took the test, and Wilfredo could remember that he came to the class, and he's sitting in the class. It's like Baby was telling a story about being in class, and Mrs. Cross yells out, "Wilfredo, come here." And Wilfredo gets off his seat like, damn. And he walks into the teacher, and the teacher, Mrs. Cross, has an envelope in her hand, and she says, "Open this." And he's like, "What is this?" And he's like, "Oh shit, it made some money." Open that up. And he opens up the envelope, and he looks inside of it, and he's like, "Where's the money at?" And she's like, "Read it." It's like, oh man. And "Dear Mr. Lopez, you have been accepted, you have scored high in your class, in your scores, you have been placed in honors classes." And he looks at Mrs. Cross and he's like, "What is this? What is this? Get a check or?" Wilfredo went home that night, and Wilfredo would walk home miles just to get home from school because mom would be at work. She'll get off from one job and go to the other one. There was no time to pick Wilfredo up from school. So he would walk home. And you remember Wilfredo would walk home, he walked in, he got home, and usually he'll just get home, take his backpack off, and run right out to the park and go play. But Wilfredo stayed home, and he had an envelope in his hand. He waited for mom to get home. And he could remember the keys. She opened the door. Wilfredo grabbed the envelope. He said, Mom, and waved the envelope at Mom. And Mom said, "What's this?" With bills in her hands. You know, the mail tends to have bills. So she had bills, and she's just like, "What is it?" And I said, "Open it, open it." Wilfredo's son became Mrs. Cross. And Wilfredo's mom became Wilfredo. And she opened it, and she says, "¿Qué es esto? What is this?" He says, read it. She says, she just put it aside. This was the attention Wilfredo was getting at home. Wilfredo went right back out to the park. He just continued to do what he does, and he played soccer. When Wilfredo turned 10 years old, Wilfredo was a great soccer player because he played it all day. And every year in December, the school would bus them up to this place called Malibu. I don't know if everybody's ever been there. It's this nice little hill area right in front of the beach. And they would bus the kids, and Wilfredo would go on the bus, and he'll get to the school, and he'll be up there, and they'll have banquets of food and gifts, and everybody will get a bag with their name, full of toys. And every year they go up there, they get stuffed, come back with a bag. This year Wilfredo was driving down, going back to the school. And as he's pulling up to the school, it's like driving up to this school, and imagine the bus coming in, and Wilfredo seen his mom's car parked outside. Mind you, Wilfredo's mom would never pick him up. She was either too tired or working. But this year, Wilfredo's mom was parked outside. Wilfredo began to worry and said, "Holy smokes, I'm in trouble. Mom's here for a reason." And he gets into the auditorium, and typically he would sneak out when everybody else was getting their kids and signing out. He would just jam out with his toys and walk home. But not this year. Mom was there. And he kept on thinking, what is it that she found out that I did? What is it that she knows? Holy smokes, I'm in trouble. He looked at what he was wearing and he said, man, it's only one pair of clothes, one shirt. And he thought of that because when Mom would spank him or beat him, he would always burn a tooth so he wouldn't feel it. Or put a third one so it wouldn't hurt. There was no way of running from this. So Mom signs him out to get in the car. And as Wilfredo was walking to the car, he would always have to go to the back of the car and open the back door because he could never sit in the front seat of his mom's car. Never knew why. Never asked. But you always had to sit in the back seat of the car. So Wilfredo sat in the back seat, and as he's sitting in the car and he puts the seatbelt, Mom turns the car on and they start heading down the boulevard. Mom doesn't say a word. Then Mom says, "Tienes hambre? Are you hungry?" Wilfredo says, "Oh." In his mind, he's thinking, you know I just ate. Every year I go up there and I'm stuffed for a week. And you're asking me if I'm hungry. And in his mind, he said, holy smokes, I'm in trouble. She's buttering me up for a good one. She's trying to just convince me that everything's okay. And I said, yeah, sure. And she says, do you want McDonald's? I doubt I have to explain what McDonald's is. But McDonald's was something that typically Wilfredo wouldn't get because they couldn't afford it. It was something when she was too tired to make something to eat, she would say, here's $10, go get some chicken nuggets or some hamburgers. And could remember my mom said, he could remember Mom said, McDonald's, he said yes. Happy Meal, he said, holy smokes. Drove down the boulevard, get the Happy Meal, get into the house, and they get to the apartment, they go upstairs, she unlocks the door, they walk right in. Wilfredo looks around, he's looking for his brothers, and he sees nobody. He's thinking, she got rid of the witnesses. Where are my brothers and sisters? Where is everybody at? Wilfredo's mom goes to the kitchen. She grabs a plate from the counter. She puts the burger and the fries and the drink on the table. Wilfredo's just thinking, she's getting ready. She's preparing my last meal. He heads off to the bathroom, he washes his hands. He's washing his hands because his mother would always say, wash your hands before anything and everything. He walks back to the dining room. He sits down on the table. Wilfredo's mom sits at a couch like if it was fading. She's sitting in the living room staring at this TV that's pitch black. It's not even turned on. And she's just gazing at it like if there's something in there that she sees. Without a flinch. Wilfredo's sitting at the table and he's eating his burger. And he's taking his time because he's like, oh man, I'm in trouble. Let somebody walk in through that door, please. But no. He finishes his meal, a burger and a french fry. It takes more time than needed. Finishes the plate, walks into the dishwasher, starts washing the plate. He turns the water on and the water's running. He finishes washing the plate, but he continues to circle it because he's just trying to buy some more time. And he's waiting for his mom to say, apaga el agua, turn off the water. No la pagas, you don't pay for it. But she doesn't. So in his mind, he knows she's upset. Wilfredo's mom sits there, and as soon as he's done, he hits the water. He knows that she heard it, that it's off. And he hears her voice say, ven aquí. Wilfredo knows what's coming. And he's thinking of what she's going to say, and he's waiting for her to say, ve agarra el cincho. That means go get the belt. Because his mother was the type of mother that she'll let you pick the belt she was going to whip you with. There was no belts ever in his house. They were all hidden. But she didn't. Wilfredo was walking to his mom as he was fading. And he says, siéntate aquí, sit right here. And he sits next to her. And still in the back of his head, he's just waiting for her to smack him on the side of his face for something that he did wrong. And he sits there and he's sitting there with fear. She looks at him and she says, no hay otra manera que te pueda decir esto. There's no other way I can tell you this. Wilfredo looks up at his mom and she says, your father is dead. Wilfredo's mom begins to cry. And Wilfredo begins to cry. This is the first time in 10 years of his life that they've ever shed a tear. His mother embraces him with a hug that he's never gotten in his whole 10 years of existence. And he's finally feeling embraced. It's still in the back of his head. He's feeling fear. Because to mind me to tell you, I told you in the beginning of the story, his father abandoned him. Wilfredo met his biological father from the same human beings, his aunts and uncles that gave him a name a few months back. 1995 was the year that I told you. Wilfredo had met his father 3 months prior to that, behind his mother's back. And the first day that he met his father, Wilfredo's life had completely changed. The same feeling that Fabian told you about, that good feeling, is what Wilfredo got. And Wilfredo said, wow, this is the man that made me. He cares about me. And he brought his family, which 3 little siblings that he had, and he said, you're their big brother. Wilfredo felt accepted. He felt loved. He felt like he belonged. And the last time that he spent with his father, has anybody been to Universal Studios, California? Wilfredo's father lived in Los Angeles, the west side to be exact. Wilfredo was raised in the San Fernando Valley, some north distance from Los Angeles. And the time that he visited his father was like Fabian would say, his son would visit him on the weekends. Wilfredo went over to his father's house, and for the first time he felt love. His father took him to the park. They played soccer with his brothers. He took his little wallet that he had in his back of his pocket, and he said, let me see that. What do you got? He opened it. It was a picture of a little girl and some baseball cards the cops used to give him at the park. He spent the day at the park, and when he came back, his father handed him his wallet and said, here. His wallet wouldn't shut. And he's like, man, this feels good. And he put it in his pocket. He went home that night to his family. He introduced him to his wife. There was a table set up like the dinner that I had last night. And Wilfredo felt like he was part of a family. His dad sat at the end of the table, but everyone else sat around him. Wilfredo felt like he had a family. To drive back from Los Angeles on that Sunday, because I had to get back. He had to get back to his mother, because he doesn't know that he's with the father. They passed Universal Studios. His father says, have you ever been there? He says, nah. Next time I get you, that's where I'll take you. This little boy never had that opportunity. His father was murdered 3 weeks later. He was just told by his mother. 1995 was the year that Wilfredo buried his father. I connect little Wilfredo to Father Greg Boyle. Father Greg Boyle would always say, you will never find a hopeful gang member. Not one. There's not one kid that joins a gang and says, I can't wait what this career and future is going to have for me, so please initiate me into this gang. Wilfredo was a young boy that wanted to be a soccer player, inspired to be something in life. And the man that he believed to be his father, the only one that accepted him no matter what, was just murdered. Wilfredo took a turn. He went from one side of the park to the other side of the park. And when he got to the other side of the park, there was these guys that were bald-headed, tough and exterior. And he said, what's up? And they accepted him. And they took him in and they said it didn't matter. They didn't care whether he had a father or a mother. They didn't care if he couldn't afford McDonald's or anything. And they embraced him. Wilfredo found a jail cell for the first time at the age of 11 because he ran up to an older lady and he snatched his purse trying to take her car. He was introduced to the system. He committed a crime at the age of 11. He was initiated into a gang at the age of 12. He received a tattoo across his neck that represented his gang when he got initiated at the age of 13 on his 13th birthday. And he caught it across his neck because that's how much his life mattered to him. He wanted you. He wanted the whole world, the cops, the enemies, everyone to see where he was from. You don't have to ask him and say, hey, where are you from? Just look at me. Read it. That's where I'm from. But he was crying to say, this is how much my life matters to me. Wilfredo continued with the gang lifestyle. He went to juvenile hall, to probation camps, and he would do great. And one day, there was a Father Greg Boyle, and he was in camp, and he was doing mass, and he was out here in the front, and he's wearing his white little tarp. He's got a little colorful thing around him, and he wears some huaraches, and he's in the front, and he's like, starts mass, and I go to mass because I want to get out of the dorm, and Wilfredo's in the mass, and he's sitting there, and he's ready to take his own nap, because it's a church. But Father Greg Boyle is this Irish man, straight white, going bald on the top, little white on the side. So I was expecting to hear something that was pretty boring. And he began to talk, and he began to talk about young men. He says, Clever walked into my office, and I said, what? He said, what? Clever? And Snoopy? And I said, wait, is that in the Bible? Wilfredo was expecting to hear about Jesus, Mary, and John, and Luke, and all those good guys. But he started to talk about Fabian walked into my office. And I said, what? And he started to talk about his ministry, which had to do something to do with Homeboy Industries. And he had his attention. Wilfredo was paying attention like, what? And at the end of the Mass, there's only one way in and one way out of the Juvenile Detention Center. They don't let you, all right, you're dismissed, go. No, you get in a line and they check you at the door. And Father Greg Boyle stood at the door, and he stands at the door, and he looks at all the kids, and he's sitting there, and he just says, everybody's coming. And he got to Wilfredo, and he's like, come see me when you're ready, son. And he's seen his tattoo on his neck. We take those off. Wilfredo was about 12, 13 years old when he ran into Father Greg Boyle. Wilfredo continued to go to camps, get out, commit crimes, involve himself with gangs, intimidate people, because he didn't want no one to see what was inside of him. So he would ask people, where are you from? What are you looking at? What you want to do? But he was hurt inside. At the age of 15, Wilfredo sat in front of a judge. And the judge sat there and said, Wilfredo, I've been seeing you since you were 11 years old. You just simply don't get it. And there was one last opportunity for Wilfredo. Wilfredo had a chance to go to this program in Nevada called Rites of Passage. And this was an all-boys program where they kept the kids inside, and they would put them through school, and they would get them for college, and they would have sports. And Wilfredo had to go through 3 clearances in order to get to this program. The approval of probation staff, the approval of his probation, the in-house staff, and approval from a therapist. And Wilfredo was a very good talker. He was really good at talking. So he'd convince you of anything. And he convinced the staff. They said, yeah, we recommend this. He convinced his probation officer, yeah, you're good. Then he sat in with a therapist, and he walks into this little room, and says to the therapist, hey, hi, nice to see you, Wilfredo. Yeah. And then she says, I'm going to ask you a series of questions. This is all confidential. But I'm going to ask you a lot of questions, but at the end of this interview, I have to make a recommendation. And Wilfredo says, oh, sure, great. So do you do this? Yes. Do you do no? Do you do family this? Yes. No. Yes. No. Yes. No. No. Yes. Then she gets to a question. She says, if you had 3 wishes that could come true right now, what would they be? And Wilfredo looks at her and he's thinking, and he says, well, one would be to get out. 2 would be to see my mom. And 3 would be to live till I was 25 years old. Continue with the questions. Do you like this? Do you like that? What color is this? This is square. Is perfect. Interview ends. Wilfredo asks, yeah, ma'am, so can I ask this recommendation? Oh, I'm going to recommend that you go to this program. Wilfredo said, I got this. Sits in front of the judge, Wilfredo's there, court's reading, court's in session, Wilfredo Lopez, da-da-da-la-la-la. Wilfredo's mom sitting behind him, doesn't understand to speak of English. And she's sitting back there and everybody's listening. Attorney, or public defender, is right next to him. They got a deal on the table. All recommendations are clear. Wilfredo can go. The judge starts flipping papers. And he says, Wilfredo, all right, I'm looking at this paperwork and I see you had 3 wishes. Oh, what happened to confidentiality? It says, I see you had 3 wishes. And the judge goes, Mr. Wilfredo Lopez, I'm going to grant you one of those wishes. Wilfredo was 15 years old. He was about 110 pounds. He had 1 tattoo across his neck. He was hurt. His father had been murdered 5 years ago. He's been involved with gangs, he used drugs, he sold drugs. He's done a lot of things. He's harmed people, but never took a life. The judge says, Wilfredo Lopez, I hereby sentence you to the Department of California Youth Authority for the remainder of your juvenile life. Wilfredo Lopez was sentenced to juvenile life to be served in the California Youth Authority at the age of 15. At that moment, he looked back at his mom, and his mom said, ¿Qué pasó? What happened? She didn't understand what was going on. And Wilfredo was hurt inside. Because he was tough, he wasn't going to cry. He was just going to put his chin up high, and just say, and he was escorted out. And Wilfredo was angry, and he took it out upon the kids. The first kids seen this, that he began to hurt the kid because he was angry inside. And then his mom came to see him, and she's behind the window, and she begins to cry. And she says, Mijo, I will give anything. I will ask your uncles to lend me money. I will get an attorney to try to get you out. And when Phil looks at his mom, he says, Mom, it's too late. I'm going to be calm for a while. And he gets up and he walks away. Wilfredo went off to California Youth Authority at the age of 15. California Youth Authority is known for Gladiator School. And the means of Gladiator School is what it means. You fight. You fight rival gang members. Wilfredo was introduced to other gangs outside of his county. You found out that there's a county called Orange County. You found out that there's a county called San Diego. Because he was introduced to Northern California. Because Wilfredo only believed that there was one neighborhood in his neighborhood, there was only one park, and there was only a couple streets, and that's as far as the world existed. But he was introduced to a bigger world. And in this pool of gladiator schools, they're not the elite of California. It's a bunch of hurt kids put together in a pool where they fight over a street sign that they will never see again or ever own. And Wilfredo did what he did best, fight. He fought for a neighborhood he believed in. He fought for that park that he used to hang out in. And he fought for it for no reason. At the age of 17, San Luis Obispo, anybody familiar with it? Wilfredo, known for the wine and the wine tasting and stuff. Wilfredo was up there in a correctional facility for the kids. And Wilfredo finds out that there's a rival gang member. Wilfredo starts fighting with this rival gang member inside of a classroom, in a classroom like the one you guys have here. And in the whole fight, he punches a teacher, and the teacher lands on his back, and he fractures his back. Wilfredo's 17 years old now, maybe 113 pounds now. And now he's sitting in front of another judge, and he's being charged with assault on a peace officer with great bodily injury. Wilfredo's attorney says, you're 17 years old. I can get you a deal. You go off to prison, you'll get out in your early 20s. Wilfredo finds no option. He says, well, let's take the deal. At the age of 17, Wilfredo was sentenced to 5 years in adult state prison with 1 felony strike. On his 18th birthday, Wilfredo Lopez was transferred to California Department of Corrections, Wasco State Prison to be exact, weighing 115 to 20 pounds. 18-year-old, like your guys' graduates, on his way to college, but no, Wilfredo's in a jail cell with a man that's doing life, and lifers right next to him. Mind you, I'm telling you a story about a little boy. Oh, man. Wilfredo spends from the age of 18 to 23 in adult state prison. He traveled from one prison to another. He involved himself with the gang, continued. At the age of 23, we felt the whole from prison. And just like Fabian mentioned, he said, hey, I'm going to get me a girlfriend, I'm going to get me a job, and I'm going to move a little bit. That fixed everything. really mistaken. Wilfredo was taken right back into the Department of Corrections, not once, but twice. And finally, just one more time. 2010 was the year to be exact. This little boy, Wilfredo Lopez, that I tell you about, was sitting in a jail cell. They say insanity is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Heck, he ended up in the same place every time. And he finally figured out, like, this is not where I want to be. But there was something different for Wilfredo this time. Wilfredo had a little baby. Because Wilfredo, when he was in prison, he could remember that at the end of the night, when his cellmate would go to sleep, and the guards would lock the bars, and he could hear the power of the lights, because they were 10 times bigger than that light, and you could hear the power of it. Wilfredo would get in his pillow and he would pray to God, God, I ask you to protect me tomorrow from getting stabbed or killed. And I ask that you help me just make the right decision, even if it's not a good one. And if I ever was to get out, just give me the opportunity to be a father. That was Wilfredo's prayer when everybody was asleep. Because Wilfredo was still a little boy. Remember I told you, insanity, sat in that cell, 6 months old. The time he paroled in 2010, Wilfredo said, I'm done with this. I want a new life. Father Rick Boyle's still there. I'm going to call the people that always said, go to him. But the Department of Corrections had a different plan. Come here. You're not going home. Matter of fact, you're going to get an ankle bracelet on your ankle. We're going to watch you 24/7. You got to be 35 miles away from your neighborhood and your family. And by the way, you got to go to a rehab. And the fellow said, what? It was an easy way to say, I'm out of here. Screw you, screw the system. I'm not going to be there. I'm gone. And the fellow stuck it out. The fellow went to a rehab. He stayed in a rehab, and he was there, like Fabian understands it well. 30 days, you can't talk to nobody, can't phone nobody, can't ask for nothing. Finally, 30 days later, they say, hey, you can go find a job. He's telling his people, hey, I want to get out of here. I'm not a drug addict. What am I doing here? He calls people that he knows, and he says, hey, I need to find a job. Hey, well, Homeboy Industries, hello. So he tells his parole officer, hey, I got a job. I just got to go down there. It's in downtown. But I have this monitor on my ankle and I can't go. He says, oh well. But they pull some strings, and somehow, by the mercy of something that's greater than everyone on this planet, he gets permission to walk and go down to downtown. So he jumps on this blue line, which is a bus or a train, and then he gets on another one, and then he finally gets to Union, and then he walks. And then he gets to the building, and he walks through these doors, and we call the doors of hope. And he sits in the lobby, and he just waits. And they let Father Rick Boyles, like, Will Lopez is here. No longer is he Wilfredo. And I think that he's ready. And he showed up. And he walks into the office, and he sits with Father Rick Boyle, and he tells him, like, what's up, G? And he says, what's up, son? And he asks, do you remember me? And he says, yeah, a little bit. And then I remind him of the people that have always been there for me. And he says, oh yeah, I know who you are. And I tell him what's going on. And he says, it's okay, you'll start on Monday. Wilfredo began that day. Wilfredo involved himself with everything that he could with Homeboys. He still had an ankle bracelet on his ankle. Wilfredo did the program. He took the classes. He got to know himself better than anybody. He found out that the root of it all was the abandonment of his father, the neglect of his mother, the abuse of his mother and his father, and he understood that it wasn't his fault. And he accepted it, and he started to move on. He got himself a therapist. And then he started to get some training. And then they started to say, hey, you're really good at leading this group. Can you lead it? He said, absolutely. He said, hey, you want to go to this training? He said, absolutely, I'll do it. All of a sudden, they cut the bracelet, and no longer is he wearing it. Then he said, you can have your own place. And then he could have his own family. And that's what he did. Wilfredo got off of parole. He no longer reports to anybody. He got certified in all kinds of things. But the most important thing to him was being a father. He made a pledge not to be like his father, which is abandoning his children, and not to show up on one day and then disappear. He's been present every single day. As a matter of fact, I had a conversation with Philip earlier. Talked to his baby on FaceTime this morning, and then sent pictures of a snow angel that he created in the snow in Washington. Wilfredo's a free man today. He doesn't worry about the cops. He has interactions with normal people. He treats people like people because that's who they are, and he expects the same back. But if he doesn't get it, it doesn't matter. Wilfredo was given a big opportunity, and it was through the founder that the video didn't work. But Wilfredo is present. Today, Wilfredo is just a brother, a father, a son, a friend. Today, Wilfredo feels and cares. Today, Wilfredo doesn't take away from nobody. He doesn't touch what's not his. And he respects everybody. Today, he loves and people love him. They accept him for who he is, no matter what he's done. Today, Wilfredo is grateful and thankful. My name is Wilfredo Lopez, and I thank you for your time.
We got Q&A for those who want to stick around, and yeah, I'm an open book. I know I missed some things in my story, but you can ask anything, and I believe you are an open book too. Right?
Yes. Any questions? I know you guys have been sitting for a while. You guys have to go. It's cool. Any questions? Feel free. Only question we won't disclose is what gang are you from? You know, are you on MSNBC? Have you been on Locked Up or any of that stuff?
Go ahead.
So we often hear about gang initiations and making you kill people. Did they make you do that?
It's a good question. You want me to answer?
We both can answer. We both have perspectives on that. I feel that, that it's like ranks. It's like the military. I compare it to the military at times. But I don't think that you're entitled to kill people. That's not like the first part of the criteria. I think I personally, and then all gangs have different policies, different rules. I think you're just involved in gang culture, and it's going to lead you where it needs to lead you to. You know what I'm saying? And so, but it's not like the high priority on the list. I'm going to hurt somebody. But remember, it's a group of miserable people who are transmitting the pain onto others. My mother and grandmother, my grandfather and grandmother taught me how not to hurt others, and taught me how I can't even kill a fly. To be honest with you. To this day, I rescue them when I see them stuck in the windshield. Because I believe in that, but not necessarily, no. There's three things, and this is important, and something that we've learned and we gained from Father Grey. There are three types of people, there are three reasons why people drink gangs. One is the mentally ill. Two, it's a kid with despair who is hopeless. And the third one, you go to my notes. I have my notes here, but I know that there's three reasons why people drink gangs. Go ahead, we'll answer the one that I'll read it.
Do people get initiated? Yes. Did I get initiated? Yes. So today I told my story a similar, different way, in a perspective where more like a storytelling. I was initiated to a gang at the age of 13. I was beaten by 7 to 8, 18 to 25-year-olds. And do you have to kill in order to be part of the gang? I think for everyone is different, and I think that the answer to that, if I can answer it, is no, you don't have to.
And back to my notes. And this is something that is very important. It says, why do kids join gangs? You don't say, I'm going to punish the behavior, but you rather say, what does this mean? Three types why kids join a gang: stop caring for self, dark despair. We cannot imagine a tomorrow. They know we'll end up in jail or death. Most of the times you're going to end up there in jail. Please, someone take me out of my misery. So that doesn't scare us in a sense. 2 is a traumatized kid, damaged or hurt by others. And then 3 is mentally ill kids who we do damage repair at home with. And then we build their ego for them to talk about. And that's when we're able to come and tell our stories in this way. But that's our 3 points important to remember. So of course you have kids who are mentally ill, people who are mentally ill, so sociopaths, people who actually do commit those types of crimes that because of their illness. And some of those do belong in prison, And so then you get to understand why did that guy kill that woman so brutally? Maybe mentally ill, but it's hidden under the gang culture. You see what I'm saying? So it kind of gives you an overview of what types of individuals are within the gang culture, and not everyone's mentally ill. I was out of despair.
Good.
Can you tell me a little bit more about the Homeboy Industries? How large is the business and how many people?
So yeah, we haven't really talked about Homeboy Industries in a sense, but Homeboy Industries has been around for 26 years. Of course, the founder is Father Greg Boyle, and Father Greg, when he first came up with the vision of Homeboy Industries, was to meet the needs of those in the community. In 1980s, there was a crack cocaine epidemic, and so during those times, there was a lot of youth out there who didn't have opportunity, who were demonized and not being able to gain employment due to the stereotypical employer, gang culture, tattoos, good for nothings, and so on and so forth. So Father Greg began by meeting the needs of the community, getting the community together to own the community by putting things in place. He marched around the near factories to gain employment, but he found that they wouldn't hire these homeboys and homegirls. How can I get you off the streets? Well, we need a school. Gee, no school will accept us, so he put a school in place called the Reverse Mission Alternative. Then he saw that every gang in the projects was coming together under that roof. And then he said, well, how can I stop you from selling drugs? Well, we need jobs, Gee. That's when the Homeboy Tortillas came about. In 1992, got the first little bakery, a little rundown bakery within the housing project. Then he saw that now these gang members are coming, has something to look forward to. Now they have meaning, they have support. It's keeping them off the streets. So he wanted to multiply that. But I gave you a job, son, and you hardly show up on time. Well, I got all this drama, Gee, baby, all these things going on at home. Oh, mental health services. Why, you wake up all hungover and you don't come to work? Oh, substance abuse. Oh, but check it out, I got you a great job over here at Part 106, but you got this tattoo on your face and they won't hire you. Oh, tattoo removal. And so little by little, all the components of Homeboy start to come about. Now that we've been in place for 26 years, we have a structure in place, which is an 18-month program. And we are a program for those who want it, not for those who need it. Everyone needs it, but who really wants it. So we immediately when they walk through our doors, we initiate a drug test immediately. That's the beginning of the 18-month program. Once you're able to pass the drug test, you go through an orientation, which gives you the whole layout of our program, with the resources, everything we have to offer, and you can still make a decision whether you're ready for the program or not. And if so, then you get an interview. And that's when Will or myself or one of the leadership team from senior staff is interviewing the individual, sort of testing the pulse. How committed are you? What brings you to Homeboy? What is it that you have to carry on a daily? Where do you stay? How stable are you? And now we're getting on the inside. And being that he really needs us, then we recommend them to go on part of the lottery. Once they get into the lottery, their name is selected. Now they're part of the 18-month program. They're assigned to a case manager who is meeting their immediate needs, whether it's parole, probation, making sure they're on top of their service plan. If there's substance abuse, I'm the one receiving them as well, part of my program. Domestic violence will receive some part of this program. So we have all these things in place that is part of the 18-month program. After the 6-month mark, then we graduate them into a business, whether it's the Homeboy Cafe, the Homeboy Bakery, the Homeboy Seal Screen, or the Homeboy Farmers Markets. Now they're learning the soft skills and how to, whether it's a bakery or whatever enterprise, or we put them in one of our components, whether it's mental health, we teach them how to be a mental health intake coordinator, whether it's employment services or learning computer skills. So what we're actually doing is building their resumes, because a lot of these people have no training whatsoever, never had a job in their life. So they come into our doors, everyone starts in janitorial, so they learn how to become responsible in janitorial, mixing chemicals. Now they're graduating into higher different enterprises as building their resume. So when the 18-month mark comes and they're about to graduate the program, now the resume looks sparkling clean. Now they have maintenance skills, now they have clerical skills, now they have bakery skills or cafe skills, whatever that comes with. And we're able to find a job placement outside of Homeboy Industries. That's the structure.
How many women do you have?
We have, it's about 15% women in comparisons to men. Reason is that there is more men that join gangs. Women are not many gang members, but they're by affiliation. Either they're involved with a gang member, married to a gang member, or have children from gang members, but come from the neighborhood. So the majority of our people are men, but we do have about 15% are women. Go ahead, ma'am.
I have a question. In the late 90s, like graffiti art was so popular, even very commercially successful. Did you see any of that? Or?
And yeah, well, graffiti art was always a form of escape and an outlet for many youth in the housing projects in the 80s. It was hip-hop culture. It was a way to escape whatever it was that you were encountering. It was just like another culture. But because of the graffiti and the vandalism and the society was now stereotyping it or demonizing it, right? It's vandalism. You don't do that. That's gang-related. But it's just, well, then put me in school. Then give us a place of inclusion, not exclusion. And that's usually what happens as a kid wants to express himself. But if you don't have a space or a school for me, then I'm going to figure out that beautiful canvas right there and I'm going to make sure I do it. Right? And then you get slapped for it, punched for it. But that's not the solution to the problem. The solution is give us an open air gallery, something that is legal, that is going to include us, so that we don't have to cry too loud and ride on the freeways. You see what I'm saying? And then, yeah, but now it's accepted.
I was wondering if you saw any of that.
And that's what I do in the art world. I mean, at one point I'm being punished and penalized for this so-called calligraphy and vandalism, but now it's okay at Mocha and Lakma, and now it's in the museum. I'm like, man, wait a minute, shit, I went to jail behind this. Now all of a sudden, this world's sometimes upside down. It's amazing how it works. But other than that, any other questions?
How long has this organization been going on?
All right.
1988, so it's about, we're on 26 years.
26 years. Go ahead.
With your art in the beginning, did you have like a darker stage in your art, and then once you almost got hit by the vehicle, did it change, evolve at all? Did you notice a change?
Oh yeah, big time. You know, art has always been my inner voice, and today I have. It's always been my inner voice. In the times of disparity, I was drawing imagery of suffering, pain, you know, suicide tendencies, and that type of emotion. But the minute I saw that I got killed by the truck, if you look at my artwork today, it's about spiritual enlightenments. You know, like the father figure with daughter. You have the sky is open. I mean, it's just a spiritual realm now. Once you get a chance, if you Google my name, you'll go to my website and you see the transition from how I used to create to it. But a lot of it kept the same. There was moments when I wanted to commit suicide, and I would draw. And then when I would draw, at the time the thought would leave of committing suicide, and then at the same time it was a reflection of my potential. So it wouldn't allow me to kill myself. You know what I'm saying? So that's powerful what it can be, at least for me. Any other questions?
Do you draw every day?
Well, I haven't drawn for the past 2 days. But yes, that's part of my exercise. Some people go to the gym on a daily, jog around the block. For me, it's sketch, create. What am I trying to say next? What's my next collection? And my mind's always creating, looking around my environment, see what triggers creation.
Do either of you have tattoos removed?
Yes. I have my neck. I have my neck here that had a big alley, solid black. You wouldn't be able to tell.
No.
I have my neighborhood behind my ear and my teardrop. And I mean, if you look at a picture of who I was right now, I don't look anything like the gang member, which is great. I haven't let my hair grow out there, but it's not acceptable in the neighborhood. But yeah, they do great work. Have you done it?
I've had my whole side removed. This one's in the process. It's 9 sessions. Back of my legs have been removed, and that's all.
Painful.
And mind you,
Oh, yes.
no, it's very painful. It hurts more to remove them than to put them on. It takes up to 12 to 13 sessions according to the ink, sometimes to remove. And also remind you, all our businesses, all our services are free. And so at Homeboy Industries, tattoo removal, substance abuse, every single except DB, that's the lowest. We go on a sliding scale, but it's still the lowest fee. Other than that, all our services are free. So you can imagine that's a bargain for the city of Los Angeles.
Is there an overnight facility at this industry? You
Is there another facility?
Overnight.
Overnight.
Oh, no. So my duty as a substance abuse counselor is not only for residential treatment facilities, but it's also for housing and transitional housing for some of the homies that come out of prison and what have you. So we build a great network relationship throughout the city of Los Angeles. Salvation Army, House of Yahoo, Walden House, Ryan Garden. So we have that direct communication with outside residential facilities. And we leave the door open as well. So sometimes they might say, hey, I got a great guy who's going to graduate the program, got a tattoo on his forehead, can you help me out? Sure enough, send them my way. Hey, I got a guy who just got out of prison, can you help me out? Sure, send them my way. So we keep that relationship open because we're all in the same business, trying to help people get their lifestyle on track.
So do you have to be a gang member to come in?
Not necessarily, ma'am. As long as we have the resource that is needed, you're more than welcome. Although our focus is with those who have more obstacles than others. So for example, if a woman from the community comes and she says, I would like to be part of Homeboy, do you have a felony? No. Have you ever been impacted by gang culture? No, I'm not from a gang. Great. You have less obstacles and you can be more successful. We help you find a job placement elsewhere. But if you have a tattoo on your neck or your boyfriend, we'll be more than happy to help you. But we focus on those who have felonies and been impacted by gangs because they'll be unlikely to get a job elsewhere. So we focus more on that. But you don't have to be a gang member to be part of the program.
So did you take the tattoos off because they were gang related, or you just felt like they needed to come off?
Well, I'll explain mine and then we'll give his perception. But for me, once you start to get a sense of the truth of who you are, and you start to love yourself, like for who you are. At one point, when you put tattoos for you, it's like self-inflicting pain. Some people cut. Some put tattoos, same thing. So when I start to look at myself in the mirror, it didn't make sense anymore because my perception in life and who I was as a father and my daughters, this didn't look right. So sometimes some people change outward in and some change inward out. So some might start off with a tattoo, right? Like, I'm just going to start with this one home. Oh, well, maybe you should hit this one home. And then next thing you know, now they're getting into the real work. So I took them off because it didn't make sense and it was not me. How about you?
I always make the example of when I first got this pattern across my neck, it was actually across my face first. And I had an older homegirl cry to me and say, hey, look, I have kids like you, and I would never want anything to happen to you just like my kids. And the reason why I wanted them across my face is one, I felt like I deserved them, and two, I felt like it didn't matter. And what I mean by that is like, I felt like if I had to walk around, like if I had a target on my face, I was okay with that. Because if I'm a target, how much do you think my life matters to me? Like, really? Like, it's there. Shoot it at any time. You probably won't miss because I'm marking it for you. My life didn't matter at that time. The tattoos came off because my life mattered more than this actual tattoo. And I can remember when I would drive my car, my first car I got, and my newborn baby's in the back. And if I had this tattoo across my neck, remember, they don't have to ask me, where are you from? No, they could read it, and that's all it took. They're not going to read it and be like, oh, there's a baby in the back, I'm not going to shoot him. No, they're just, so my life mattered more to me than this. So I had to take it off. Every gang-related tattoo that is visible, I took off. Because my life matters to me more than this tattoo. Everything else is cultural tattoos that I got. I've added more, like my wife's name, my daughter's name, the portraits, things of that nature. But gang-related tattoos, my life matters more than the actual tattoo.
Did both your moms get to see the success you guys have become?
Yes, my mother is still living healthy, thank God, and like I mentioned, she said I turned 15 years old, matter of fact, and now she's very proud when she sees her son on the news and all these great art exhibits, and she's just like, I mean, she's just, all her prayers came true, and I thank God that she's still alive to this day. My father, I lost him, he eventually overdosed and passed away when I was 25, so he didn't see, but I know he's happy though, even for a fact.
My mother is a Salvadorian, very prideful lady, still has a lot of attitude. And my mom, and I'll tell this tomorrow when I talk to the kids, I'll tell my story completely different just because I know so many guys will be there tomorrow. But my mom used to drive us around in the car everywhere we'd go. And when I was like 7, she would drive by my homeboys, and she'll look at them and she says, "Como los odio, los detesto, how I hate you. You guys are worthless," right? And I'll be sitting in the back. And when I joined the gang, my mom said to me, "Lo que más detesto, lo tengo en mi casa. What I hate the most, I have in my own house." So my mom felt like that for a very long time. My mom, every time I got out, was like, "You're never going to change. So why should I even care?" So she detached. And finally, when I finally was like, "Mom, I'm not going back," like, I got the bracelet, it came off, I have a place in my family, and she still was like, didn't want to get close to me, because she felt like, I'm just going to get close to you for you to go back to prison, because that's all you know. And finally, I think until like last year, my mom and I had a good conversation, and she says, "Nico, it's like, I love you, you know, and I really want to be there for you, but I don't know how, you know, I really don't know how." And I told her in English, like straight, like, "Mom, like, I understand, you know, that a lot of the stuff you do is because you don't know how to do it, but you don't have to continue to act that way. Like, I'm not that kid anymore." And it's still hard for her to accept the fact that I'm not going back to prison, and that I'm a father and I'm taking care of my family. So she struggles, and I'm being as honest as I can, because she'll call me out of the blues and says, "¿Por qué no me has hablado? Why haven't you called me? What if you're dead? And I don't know. Like, you gotta tell me something, like, you know." And that's how I know that she cares. And sometimes she'll be like, she'll read little things online and be like, "What are you saying?" And I'm like, "Mom, I'm just telling my truth from my eyes, and you might not like it, but it's my truth." It's hard. It's really hard.
It's interesting to me because I did some research about your facilities and stuff, and I would really like to know where they come up with some of the recipes because they sound great. Well, one of my questions is what is the success rate of the program? And then 2, have you been able to encourage the state of California to embrace the program and to help provide the funding for something that seems to be working?
Let me answer the second one and you can do the success rate. Californians, they love us, right? "We love you, homeboys, we love you, but we won't give you money." That's it's the truth. It's hard to say like, "Yeah, we're going to support gang members." And when they say, "You put a bunch of gang members together, is that really going to work?" Well, you put us in jail together. You think that works? So, have we got them to endorse us? I think to an extent. Not fully the way that we would love them to. State government, they tend to say, "We'll give you money, but they come with these rules. So you have to follow this, and if you don't follow that, then, hey, next year, sorry, but the check's not coming in the mail." So we struggle with that because we're dealing with human beings that we're not a computer, we're not a robot, so you can't program us to like do it at a certain time. So it might take for Fabian to fall 3 times, and it might take for Willow to slip 10 times. So it's hard to convey that message to the government and the state and say, "Hey, you know, they're gonna trip and fall, and they'll come back 10 years later, and then, you know, that money, what happened to the money?" So it's very difficult. So we don't have it fully endorsed, and the recipes, they come from Patty, who started a restaurant back in the days, and then they made it the Homegirl Cafe. It's a Mexican food with a twist of contemporary. We dice some apples and find the stuff on top of it. Make it look fancy. But now it's getting reformed. The menu's getting reformed. We got a new manager in there. She's trying new stuff. We're trying any way we can. It's good food, and it's made with a lot of love.
And the success rate. The success rate, you know, like Well, we do have 70% success rate. So for example, 30% reoffend and 70% don't reoffend. And now, unlike the other nonprofit organizations or gang intervention programs throughout California, it's the opposite. So 70% reoffend and 30% don't offend. So we flip that number upside down. And it's so true what Will said about the funding and the government. We get 12% funding from the government. I think now it's just 10% in comparison to our big old pie. We get about 37% of our enterprises come in. We're hoping we can bump that up to 70%, right? From the bakery, cafe, and all that. Because it's very hard to depend on government. You know, they still have all these criteria, data collection, and if you don't meet that criteria, and you know, we're not about judgment and denying. So the federal grant comes and says to me, I need you to work with these kids who are 17 to 23, who just got out of camp, who need to check in with you within the first 72 hours, and if not, then I'll take part of the grant. We say, no, what about the others that don't fit in the criteria? So it's very difficult. It's always a tug and pull with the government. But we're working on it. We're very relationships. We have a network now. A lot of politicians are starting to pay attention. So we're hoping we can change that perception soon.
I wish LA had used the money they spent on the iPads.
Or like the story that I mentioned, there was about 2010 we had a Black Thursday. We laid everyone off. If you guys could go on Netflix, there's a movie called G-Dog, and that's the movie of Father Gray and our Homeboy Industries. It takes you into our organization, and there you will see the 2010, which was Black Thursday, and right there and then they laid off 300 employees, including Father Gray, because we didn't have the funding to keep our doors open. During that time, they were trying to fix the Hollywood sign, which cost $12 million. All right? And so, being that we're the symbol of hope to the city of Los Angeles, we were hoping they could pinch a little bit of that $12 million for the Hollywood sign and rescue us. But that just goes to show you that the population we work with is less than the Hollywood sign. They fixed that first. So, what's wrong with that picture? You see what I'm saying? So that's what we fight for. That's what we push for, to try and get them to flip that, change the perception. Any other questions? You had a question? Go ahead, man. All right, go.
I remember you said during your story how important it was to get the net tattoo. When it was removed, what did you feel?
That's an important question. It's difficult, to be honest. I went in there scared. Scared because at one point I was willing to sacrifice my whole life for what this stood for. So it's a big commitment, and I think that anyone that's going in to take a tattoo that's gang related is huge. It's not just something where you walk in and say, hey, I gotta do it, it's gotta get done. It's difficult. You know, you gotta be at a place where you're making this commitment. And so it was very hard. Upon me getting it completely removed, and once I knew that it was like, that's it. Like I really sensed a sense of like, this is who I am, and I'm okay with it. I finally felt like, this is who I am, and I'm okay with that. And it didn't matter if like, a lot of people say like, they're not gonna kill you because you didn't take it off, or your homeboys ain't gonna get you, or isn't that like betraying the gang? It's like, no, it's not. It's me becoming a man, becoming responsible, and just doing what I'm supposed to. And think about gang members, and even active ones, they're not bad people. They just make some stupid choices. That's the truth. So like, I have friends that, until this day, they're my friends. I don't acknowledge and accept things that they do, and I don't do it with them. But, hey bro, good job, man. And I wish someday I could get to where you're at. But just right now, I'm still doing what I'm doing. See, so I can't change it. So it feels good to just be me.
Do both of you, or maybe some of the other leaders, go back to your gangs that you originally belonged to and try and help the people that you were in the gang with, or?
I've had in the message is loud and clear. The minute I decided to leave the gang, you change completely all around. So for me, the minute I say I'm through with I'm done, forget the gang culture, you have to change completely all around. There's none of that one foot in, one foot out.
Yeah.
It's either you're going to change or you're not, because it's contradicting to the policy or the rules of the gang culture. And now, once that message is sent, now they know who to come to. I've had friends who come from our own neighborhood still to Homeboy Industries, who I've gotten them with opportunity at Homeboy, or who I've could send them to rehab when needed. But now they have that utmost respect that Fabian is done. You can come to him only for this reason. Drug, substance abuse counseling, nothing else. And so yes, I'm still there for that.
I don't go into them and say, hey guys, chance. I don't do that. But same like Fabian, the door's open for them whenever they're ready. And they're not gonna come say, I want to change my life. They're just gonna start like, hey, can you help me get a job? Or hey, can the tattoo? Hey, this and that. So that's the way that I have the door open for them.
Yes.
Is there something as a whole that we could do or someone we could contact? I don't know if you've heard of Invisible Children, and they work a lot with the child slaves in Africa. And a lot of people put that together. It's called the Fourth Estate to support that and get money going and get awareness out there. Is there a way that we can start doing that for your organization to get the word out there?
Sure, there's a website. Before I leave, we will give you our business card. And if the idea, if you want to pitch, we'll make sure we connect you to the proper people at Homeboy. And we're always welcoming either donations or these types of relationships that could continue to get this awareness out to a further audience. We're always open to that. So make sure you speak your will after this. We'll get you our contact. I'm just going to take it from there.
And if it's about raising money, get a group together and say, hey, we're supportive Homeboys, and we take donations and get a pool and send it in. And just be like, we're the Washington support group, or Baltimore, or Maryland, or whatever you want to label it. You can do that all on your own.
There's a donation button on our website as well. $5, $10.
Makes a difference.
That makes a difference.
A lot of people say like, well, what can I do? And so it's like, maybe you won't be able to actually go there, but $1 helps, 50 cents helps, 10 cents helps, anything.
Or if we move back to Los Angeles where the weather's nice. Right? If you go to LA. Any other questions?
Yes.
Go ahead, and then I'll get you, man. Go ahead.
I was in Richmond, there's drug and alcohol use. How do you expose that?
So here's this. So the thing is that with alcohol and so it's all behavioral, right? Interesting part is that the trainings that I've been to, it's funny because there's the trainings where they're training people in how to provide a service for people with money. And interestingly, I provide this service to people with no money, right? And it's the same training that they will get for them that they'll get for us. And how those people are being reached is that they have a pocket full of money, so they go for those that provide a service for money. They won't come to us because we're free, and they won't fit in. So they'll continue to look for a service where the money's provided, where they charge, and they get that service.
And so, but with the understanding that the population we work with is gang culture, so everything's entwined. So, if you're involved in gangs, there's drugs. If there's drug addiction, then there's gangs. There's at times everything's there. So we make sure that we have all those things that counter gang culture, right? So if we're involved in a gang, we have substance abuse. You have tattoos and crack, we have tattoo removal. But we always, I was a drug addict. And that's, when I was a gang member, I was a drug addict. And so, yes, I've done a lot in my life. I've hurt others, and I've committed some crimes. But my problem became behind drug addiction. And I found that out when I went to rehab. So that was what I had to focus on because of the traumas and my dad being a heroin addict himself. Same thing. The minute they come to Homeboy, they get the interview, there's an assessment made, and then we target whatever that main issue is. Gang culture is like an addiction in itself. Gang culture, for example, and what happens is when I was no longer in gangs, I became a drug addict because I was still missing that rush, that excitement that comes from gang culture as well from drugs. So I substitute one thing for another. So when they come to our office, due to the assessment, some are not drug addicts, but they're so consumed by this lifestyle. So it's just gang culture, so we have things to implement that, to take care of that. But the assessment allows us to recognize where the main issue lies. And that's how we start to depict who belongs in what program, what part, what we're going to put in the service plan, and what have you. And we allow everyone to come to our place. Like I said, We don't do outreach and go to the neighborhoods and say, come to Homeboy, it's gonna change your life. That's dangerous, bro. And not only that, but that's forcing someone to make a commitment of change. No, walk to our doors, send the message to us that you want to change. And that's why our doors are always open. That's how we do our little outreach, let them come to us. Go ahead, ma'am.
So, Will, you mentioned at some point that the justice detention system sent you to rehab, even though you weren't a drug addict. I mean, was there an assumption that you must be addicted to something, or was it really to, I mean, did they just send everybody? I mean, just...
So in my instance, I have been to rehab maybe like twice before that, right? And every time I show up, like, I have a drug problem. But when you finally realize that, yes, there's drug, and maybe Fabian can confirm this, but 95% of the problem is your behavior. 5% is the drug. Yes? No?
Yes.
Yes. So realize that. But I just was so hesitant to like, why am I going there? But another thing about the Department of Corrections is that whenever you don't have a suitable house to go home to, they place you in rehabs because they already have a connection with them. So it's easy to say, go there. And they know that 9 times out of 10, the gang member's gonna say, I don't want to go to freaking rehab, see you later. And they'll run. See, now we gotta go get them and put them back in jail. So they want to do that. It's a system thing. Barbara?
Yeah, oh, yeah. My question is, once the homeboy decides to leave the gang, so they're leaving their environment, they choose to change their life, where do they live? I mean, they don't know where to, I mean, they've always lived within that one realm, and now they're trying to change their life and they don't want to go back because they've already crossed that line. Where do they find housing, or how do they pay for housing to live in a place to change their life and stay in a positive environment?
It's all individualized. So individualized means every individual is treated differently. So for example, me, I still live in Low Heights. Thank God that I have a great mother support that my wife stuck it out with my children. So for me, it was an easier transition getting out of rehab because I had a place to go to. Now, there's some people who don't have that family support, who burn outreaches, who don't have a place to go, or who come to us and say, oh, I'm really trying to change, but I still live in my neighborhood, homie, and it's becoming a little heavy for me to stay focused on my progression. Okay, if you're committed, why don't we help put you in a sober living across town, and then we will put you there, we'll house you there, that keeps you away from your hood, and then removes the external stressor that you're dealing with. So it all consists of the case managers and the counselors and mentors where we get down the inside and hey, dude, you know, why aren't you coming late? I have to pass 2 buses, homie, so I don't have to go through this neighborhood because they're always outside of my house. Then what's the problem? You need to move out of your neighborhood. Now, if you want to be part of the program, this is the way we help. Putting you in a different side of town, in a transitional housing. Are you with that? Sure. And we help them with those type of things. So, you know, we always take care of that. It all depends on the individual and their circumstances.
So does Homeboys help pay for that, pay for the housing so that person can relocate to that new place?
We have ways of the case manager to be able to check his finances accordingly, and if it has to do with him having responsibilities of paying rent, we give an advance or maybe a loan where we take 50 out of each paycheck just to make sure. But all that goes through the case manager who's going to make sure we don't leave them empty-handed, broken, and back in the hole. So that's the beauty of Homeboy, that we're able to maneuver through all that support.
And while they're in this 18-month training program, they're getting paid.
Oh,
So they're getting paid hourly.
That's
So
right.
the goal is that we're getting them to get started, to learn responsibility. Then we start saying, hey, we need to start saving up, find yourself a room, you know, that's the kind of thing. So we're helping them by paying them to change their lives. That's why we run out of money, and that's why the state's not helping us out.
So it's the incentive. So the incentive is to give them jobs. And so if you're following your service plan, your job description is to work on yourself. And so we pay you to work on you. What other place would do it? You know? You had a question?
Yeah, there was a good article on the front page of the Post today and talked about inequality and mobility and how that they've been doing studies since the 40s, and there's really been no change as far as, you know, you're a product of your environment. The cycle continues, and you know, for y'all to, and they said, like the latest study that just came out, only 9% of the people in the lowest income bracket really do any better than their parents did at 26 is what age they talked about, but 9%. And so for y'all to really just take that statistic and just throw it in the trash is awesome.
Pretty much, and I think that's the thing, and until this day, there's a thing about me. When I was a kid and I was 17 years old, or actually 13, 14, when I discovered my gift of art, if my mother could have found me a school throughout my community, maybe it would have allowed me to find a different path, because that's why I ended up in the LA River.
Yeah.
At 38, I'm 38 now, I have 5 children, and I go to Boyle Heights where I still live, try to find an art school for my children, and guess what? There's still no art school. So what does Fabian need to do? Build his own art academy to provide that art school for kids like myself. I'm employing for my children to give them an escape and expand their horizons, not to be impacted by the issues of the environment. And so it's so true, they need to invest more in that. I believe in the Metro Rail too, but and that's where the money goes and gets misconstrued by the government. It's very crazy, but the issues still lie, and that's what we do. We ignite hope, we give a sense of community, kinship within Homeboy so they can learn how to re-identify who they are without judgment. And that's the beauty of life.
I love educators, especially principals. Because they read the newspaper every day. But here's the thing, and the beauty is that like today I'm going to school and I'm in my first year going back to college, and I have the best history teacher in California. And the thing about history is that it's telling you what the future is going to be, and exactly what you're talking about. And it's literally like nothing has changed. The reason why it hasn't changed is because I'm getting an education at 28 years old. Like, it's a long gap. You see what I'm saying? So if I would have had this opportunity a long time ago, I wouldn't be sitting here, and I'd probably be maybe the principal of school. And I have a homie here like every month. But it's about the opportunities, and they're not equal. Yes, that is true. They're not. And we are for education, not all of it, but for education and learning more, because those communities don't have any education. And while they don't have any education, hey, we don't got to worry about it, because they will continue to be at that level. And everyone else is up here. And it's kind of like, they don't care. They're not trying to get out, let's leave them. And yeah.
And I think that's the importance today, that Will and myself are able, wise enough to understand that. And so today, our kids have a greater chance of succeeding in life because of what's taking place in the household. Love, affection, recognition, acknowledgement, opportunity is given. I'm building the opportunity for those 5 children to gain when the time arises. I was offered, I can go to Otis College of Design at 38, go get me a master's degree in fine arts. Yeah, I can do that. I can get a bachelor's degree in fine arts, and I'll be a BFA. Yeah, I can do that. But my son Fabian Jr. is 14 years old, who's making his way to high school, and eventually is going to want to go to Otis. So let me hand him the baton. I already have my school. I think I can survive. Give him the opportunity to go to Otis and get his 4 year, and then I can sit back. I could later go get it too, right? But why invest in me and spend $250,000 or something for the next one? Now I need it for Fabian. I'm willing to take that ride. And I got that today.
Yes, ma'am.
Do you have a lot of support from the LAPD?
We have relationships with the LAPD. No, we do. We have shift back coming in. We had Lee Baca come in. They have their own program, reentry program, and create their own perception of what gang intervention is. And we have our own perception of what gang intervention is. And sure enough, their programs bring their training, their clients into our program. But there's still that, there's like everything, good apples, bad apples. You got people who believe in us and people who don't believe in us. I am a consultant. I'm able to go to the police academies and talk about Homeboy Industries and so on and so forth. Yeah, I get some smirks in the back, I get some frowns over here, but then I get at least 5 or 6 detectives who are really interested in intervention. So that's where it begins, and that's how it begins. And it's always about informing them of what we really do at home. That we don't harbor criminals. We're not just a place that harbor criminals and enable them, as they say. We are a place of this, and I'm the hope and the flesh, and they belong. And then it just starts to build a little bit.
How do most people find out about
Father Greg,
Father Greg, the internet, and the book, and the movie, and Fabian, and me, and you, and you.
Yeah, so Homeboy Industries has been around for 26 years, and most of the outreach comes from Father Greg Boyle going into the prisons, and now with the G-Dog movie, I'm surprised, I don't know how many of us heard of G-Dog. The movie, it was made by Freedom Hawk, great filmmaker, it was all in the film festival, so if you have Netflix, go and watch it, it's free there, and it takes you into our organization and of what we do, and it gives you the whole insight. And so that would be a good way to get more understanding of Homeboy, and the website, we're all over the place. I mean, we just came to Washington, and we were going up to the Lincoln Memorial, we were walking up, and they seen Will's sweater, 2 women were walking down, they're like, oh, all the way over there. And we started laughing, and then they were talking about us on the way down. And I mean, that's all we're Any other questions? I know it's getting late, and I know some people are busy, but is there any other?
We want to thank everybody for the food, the one that baked, cooked, all that good stuff. Our work for the day. Mark and Carol have been great to hold houses and host us. Principal for having us. Everyone for sitting through this. We have our pamphlet here in the front. We only have one, so you guys can look through it. You can always go to www.homeboyindustries.org. Go to the Facebook page, go to the Twitter, go to the Instagram. We're all over the place. There's some YouTubes. You can YouTube Fabian the Hora with Fredo Lopez, Will Lopez, Father Greg Boyle. YouTube, you'll find some stuff on us. You'll hear the same talk in different senses. I do it in Spanish, French, English.
Well, thank you again for coming out.